The morning alarm screamed at 4:30, but Emma Chen was already awake. She'd been awake since 3, when Sophie's breathing had turned raspy, that wet whistle that meant the inhaler was running low again. She couldn't afford to refill it until Friday. Today was Wednesday. She pressed her hand to her daughter's forehead. Cool enough. The wheezing had settled into something manageable, the kind of manageable that meant Emma would check her phone 17 times during her shift. Terror wrapped around her ribs like wire. The apartment was a studio in Pilsen that cost too much and offered too little. One room divided by a curtain Emma had sewn from thrift store sheets. Sophie's stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hopsworth, sat guard on the pillow, his button eye hanging by a thread Emma kept meaning to fix. She showered in 4 minutes because the hot water was a luxury measured in seconds. She dressed in the dark, navy work pants and a gray shirt that said Sterling Distribution across the back in letters meant to inspire pride. It didn't. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. She braided her hair with the efficiency of a woman who'd learned to do everything one-handed while holding a child. Sophie stirred as Emma made oatmeal from the generic container she'd stretched across 2 weeks. "Mama?" "Right here, baby." Emma sat on the edge of the mattress they shared. "How's your breathing?" "Better." Sophie's voice was small but steady. 6 years old and already learning to lie about pain because she'd watched her mother do it. Emma spooned oatmeal into her daughter's mouth, counted the bites, calculated the days until the paycheck that would let her buy the prescription. $87. The inhaler cost $87, and her bank account held $43. "Mrs. Kim is picking you up at 7, Emma said. Mrs. Kim was 72 and lived across the hall and watched Sophie for $20 a day, which was a gift, which was also $20 Emma needed for other things, like food, like electricity, like the medical bills that arrived in white envelopes with red letters. "I like Mrs. Kim," Sophie said. "She lets me help with her plants. Be good for her." Emma kissed her daughter's forehead, inhaled the scent of her shampoo, $2 watermelon from the corner store. "I love you more than the whole sky. I love you more than all the stars," Sophie whispered back, their ritual. Emma walked 4 blocks to the bus stop in the dark. Chicago in October was cold preparation, the kind that practiced on your bones before winter arrived with its real teeth. She counted the other people waiting. 2 women in scrubs, 1 man in a security uniform, all of them holding coffee in paper cups, steam rising like small prayers. The bus was late. It was always late. Emma checked her phone. 4:53. Her shift started at 6. Sterling Distribution didn't care about buses or sick children or women who ran on 4 hours of sleep and determination. She made it with 3 minutes to spare. The warehouse sat on the industrial edge of Chicago like a gray tooth, functional and ugly. Sterling Distribution moved luxury goods through the city's arteries. Designer handbags, watches, perfumes. Things Emma would never touch outside these walls. Things she packed into boxes for people who bought them without checking the price. She clocked in at 5:58. The time card system was digital now. A screen where you pressed your thumb and it recorded your hours in a database controlled by people who'd never packed a box in their lives. The screen flashed green. Emma Chen. Logged in. 5:58 a.m. Cutting it close, Chen. The voice belonged to Derek Voss, warehouse floor manager. 42, divorced twice, the kind of man who wore authority like cheap cologne. He stood by the break room door with his tablet, the one he used to track metrics and make decisions about people's lives. "Bus was late," Emma said, which was true and also wouldn't matter. "Bus is always late for you." Voss smiled, the expression stopping at his mouth. "Maybe you need better time management." Emma swallowed the response, sitting on her tongue like acid. "Won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." He walked away, and Emma felt the weight of his attention like a hand between her shoulder blades. The morning shift was brutal by design. Sterling moved 12,000 units on a good day, and today was meant to be a good day. Emma's station was pack and sort, which meant she stood at a conveyor belt and made decisions in seconds. Handbag, box, tissue paper, tape. Handbag, box, tissue paper, tape. Her hands moved in a rhythm that bypassed thought. Around her, 30 other workers did the same. Most were women. Most were immigrants or single mothers or both. Most spoke in fragments of English and full sentences of exhaustion. Maria worked the station to Emma's left. Dominican, 3 kids, a husband who'd left 2 years ago with the car and the savings. "You look tired," Maria said in Spanish, the language she used when English felt like too much effort. Sophie's asthma, Emma replied, also in Spanish. Her mother had been from Guangzhou, her father from Mexico City. She'd grown up speaking 3 languages and belonging fully to none of them. The inhaler? Can't afford to refill until Friday. Maria's face did something complicated, sympathy wrestling with her own calculations. She had her own children, her own impossible math. I have a neighbor who's a nurse. Maybe she can… It's fine, Emma lied. We're fine. The lie tasted like cardboard, but it was easier than accepting help she couldn't return. By 10, Emma's feet were screaming. By noon, her back had joined the chorus. She took her lunch break in the warehouse parking lot because the break room smelled like microwaved desperation, and she needed air. She called Mrs. Kim. How's Sophie? Good, good. Mrs. Kim's English was limited. Her kindness wasn't. We plant basil. She sing to the plant. Emma closed her eyes, pictured her daughter singing to herbs in a plastic pot, and felt something in her chest crack open just slightly. Thank you. She ate the sandwich she'd made at 5 that morning. Peanut butter because protein was cheap. She calculated hours. Her shift ended at 2. Sophie needed the inhaler. The pharmacy closed at 8. She could make it work if she could leave on time. But on time was a fantasy at Sterling Distribution. At 1:45, Voss appeared at her station with his tablet and his expression. Chen, I need you to stay late. Emma's stomach dropped. I can't. I have childcare, I know. Voss scrolled through something on his screen. But we're short-staffed, and you're one of our most efficient packers. 2 extra hours. Time and a half. Time and a half would mean she could refill the inhaler and still have money for groceries. Time and a half would also mean Sophie would be with Mrs. Kim until after dark. Would mean Emma would miss bedtime. Would mean her daughter would go to sleep without her mother. I really can't. It's not a request. Voss's voice hardened. It's operational need. You want to be a team player, don't you, Chen? Team player. The phrase companies used when they meant do what we say or we'll find someone who will. Yes, Emma heard herself say, hating the word, needing the money. Good. Clock out at 4. He walked away before she could negotiate. Emma called Mrs. Kim, apologized, promised extra payment she didn't have. Mrs. Kim said it was okay. Said Sophie could have dinner with her. Said not to worry. Everyone said not to worry. As if worry was optional. As if women like Emma had the luxury of calm. At 4:03, Emma finished her last box and walked to the time clock. Her feet were numb. Her shoulders felt like someone had driven nails into the joints. But she'd earned 2 extra hours at time and a half, and that meant Sophie could breathe. She pressed her thumb to the screen. Emma Chen, clock out. 4:03 p.m. The screen flashed green. She'd logged 10 hours and 5 minutes. With the overtime calculation, that was enough. She rode the bus home in the dark, picked up Sophie from Mrs. Kim's apartment, paid her the $20 plus 10 extra for staying late. Sophie fell asleep against her shoulder. Mr. Hopsworth clutched in her fist. Emma carried her daughter up the stairs, changed her into pajamas, kissed her forehead, and collapsed onto the mattress beside her. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow she'd get through another shift. And Friday she'd see the paycheck that would fix everything. She fell asleep, believing the lie. Friday morning arrived with the same alarm and the same exhaustion. Sophie's breathing was worse. The inhaler was empty. Emma had called the pharmacy Thursday night, asked if they could extend her credit. Heard the apologetic no she'd expected. Just hold on until 2. Emma whispered to her daughter as she made oatmeal. Mama, gets paid today, and then we'll get your medicine. Sophie nodded, her small chest working harder than it should, and Emma felt rage and helplessness wage war in her stomach. The bus was late again. Emma made it to Sterling at 5:59. She worked her station with the focus of a woman who needed the shift to end, who needed the paycheck to clear, who needed her daughter to breathe without struggle. Around her the warehouse hummed its industrial song. Conveyor belts, forklifts, the periodic beep of scanners reading barcodes. At noon, Voss appeared with his tablet. Chen, come with me. Something in his voice made Emma's spine straighten. She followed him to the office at the back of the warehouse. A room with glass walls and a door that closed with a click that sounded too much like a trap. Voss sat behind a desk that wasn't his, gestured to a chair. Emma remained standing. There's a problem with your time card, Voss said, spinning the tablet to face her. Emma looked at the screen. Her hours for Wednesday. The screen showed her clock in at 5:58. Her clock out at 2:01. That's wrong, Emma said immediately. I worked until 4. You asked me to stay late. Did I? Voss tilted his head, expression neutral in a way that was anything but funny. I don't remember that conversation. Emma's blood turned cold. I clocked out at 4:03. I pressed my thumb to the screen. It registered. Systems make mistakes. Voss shrugged. Sometimes timestamps don't record properly. Without the digital record, there's no proof you worked past 2. She stared at him, understanding arriving like a punch. You deleted my hours. That's a serious accusation. His voice was mild, dangerous. You're saying I committed time theft? Against you specifically? I worked 10 hours Wednesday. You owe me for 10 hours, not 8. The system shows 8. Voss stood, closing the distance between them. And the system doesn't lie, Chen. People lie. People come in late, leave early, claim hours they didn't work. People like you. People like you. The words did what they were designed to do. Made her small, made her powerless, made her the problem. I need that money, Emma said, and hated how her voice broke. My daughter's inhaler. Should have thought about that before you decided to game the system. Voss opened the office door. Your paycheck reflects the accurate hours. Take it up with HR if you want. But HR is going to ask for proof, and you don't have any. Emma walked out of the office on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. She clocked out at 2, went to the payroll window, collected her check. She opened the envelope in the parking lot and did the math that confirmed what she already knew. 2 hours missing, $143 stolen. Not enough for the inhaler and groceries and rent and everything else that required money she didn't have. She stood in the October cold, holding a piece of paper that represented her week, her effort, her daughter's ability to breathe, and felt something inside her crystallize into fury. She didn't see the man watching from the black sedan parked 3 rows away, didn't notice the way he lowered his phone after taking a photo of her face, the expression there, the moment a woman decides she's done being quiet. Didn't know that Damien Corso, silent investor in Sterling Distribution, had watched the entire confrontation through the office's glass walls. Didn't know that he'd been conducting a routine audit of his holdings when he'd witnessed a manager delete a time card entry. Didn't know that the man who owned 15% of the company that had just stolen from her was also the man who controlled half of Chicago's most profitable shadows. All Emma knew was that her daughter needed medicine. Her boss had stolen her wages, and the system was rigged against women like her. She folded the paycheck, put it in her pocket, and walked to the bus. Stop. Behind her, in the sedan, Damien Corso made a phone call. Run a background check on Emma Chen, warehouse worker at Sterling Distribution. I want everything by tonight. He ended the call, his jaw tight with the kind of anger that doesn't announce itself, just calculates how best to dismantle what needs dismantling. He'd built an empire by understanding leverage, by knowing when to apply pressure, by recognizing the exact moment people revealed who they really were. Derek Voss had just revealed himself, and Emma Chen, standing at a bus stop with shoulders that refused to slump despite carrying too much weight, had revealed something else entirely. He watched until the bus swallowed her, then pulled into traffic. Some audits, he thought, required more than spreadsheets. Emma didn't go home. She got off the bus 3 stops early and walked to the community clinic on Ashland, the one that stayed open until 7 for people whose emergencies happened after business hours. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic, and the particular desperation of people choosing between medicine and rent. She filled out the paperwork with hands that wanted to shake but didn't, because shaking was a luxury she couldn't afford. Sophie sat beside her. Mr. Hopsworth in her lap, breathing in a way that made the receptionist glance over twice. Asthma? The woman asked, her voice carrying the weight of having asked the question too many times. Yes. Her inhaler's empty. I just need a prescription. Do you have insurance? Emma handed over the card for the state program that covered some things sometimes if you filled out the right forms and waited the right amount of time. The receptionist scanned it, frowned at her screen. There's a copay issue. Your coverage lapsed last month. That's impossible. I paid. Emma stopped. She'd paid late. 15 days late because she'd had to choose between the insurance premium and the electricity bill, and Sophie couldn't breathe, in the dark, either way. You'll need to re-enroll. That takes 7 to 10 business days. She needs the inhaler now. I understand, but she can't breathe. Emma's voice didn't rise, it sharpened. She's 6 years old, and she can't breathe, and I need someone to help me. The receptionist's face softened in the way of people who witness suffering they can't fix. "Let me talk to the doctor. Wait here." They waited. Sophie's head rested against Emma's arm, her small chest working too hard. Around them, other people waited with their own catastrophes. A man with a towel wrapped around his hand, blood seeping through. A woman rocking a crying baby. An elderly couple holding each other's hands like they were afraid of getting separated. This, Emma thought, is America. This waiting room full of people whose bodies had betrayed them in a country that charged admission to survival. 20 minutes later, a doctor emerged. Young, tired, wearing scrubs that had seen too many shifts. "Emma Chen?" They followed her into an exam room barely large enough for the table and 2 chairs. The doctor listened to Sophie's lungs, frowned, listened again. "She needs a nebulizer treatment immediately, and a new prescription for the rescue inhaler." "How much?" Emma asked, because that was always the first question and the last question, and the only question that mattered. "The treatment we can do here. No charge." The doctor pulled out her prescription pad. "The inhaler, with your insurance lapsed, you're looking at full price. Around $90 at most pharmacies. $90. Emma had $43 in her bank account and a paycheck for $622, which was supposed to be $765, which was supposed to be enough. "Is there a generic?" "This is the generic." Emma closed her eyes, opened them, made a decision that would cost her in different currency. "Can you write the prescription?" "I'll figure out the payment." The doctor wrote it, handed it over with an expression that said she'd seen this script before, knew how it ended, wished she could change the ending. They did the nebulizer treatment in a room with a mural of cartoon animals that were supposed to make children feel better about medical interventions. Sophie sat still while the mask pumped medication into her lungs, her eyes watching her mother's face for signs of panic. Emma smiled, kept smiling, didn't let her daughter see the calculations happening behind her eyes. By the time they left the clinic, it was nearly 8. The pharmacy near their apartment was closed. The 24-hour one was 6 blocks away in a neighborhood Emma avoided after dark, but desperation redraws maps. She held Sophie's hand as they walked, the prescription folded in her pocket like a promise she didn't know how to keep. The pharmacy was fluorescent bright, too many lights revealing too much. Emma approached the counter where a pharmacist in her 50s looked up with the practiced neutrality of someone who distributed hope in pill form. "Prescription for Sophie Chen." The pharmacist scanned it, typed, frowned at her screen in a way that made Emma's stomach clench. "This will be $93.42. Emma pulled out her wallet. $43 in cash. Her debit card connected to an account that would bounce. Her credit card that was maxed and had been for 6 months. "Do you have a payment plan option?" "Not for prescriptions under $200. I'm sorry." Sorry. Everyone was sorry. Nobody was helpful. Emma looked down at Sophie, at her daughter's chest rising and falling with effort, at the trust in her eyes that said, "Mama would fix this because Mama fixed everything." "Can I?" Emma stopped hating the question, asking it anyway. "Can I pay part now and part later?" "Store policy requires full payment at pickup." Behind Emma, the line was growing. A woman with 2 screaming toddlers, a man checking his watch with aggressive impatience, witnesses to her humiliation, to the moment she couldn't provide for her child. "Please," Emma said, the word costing everything. "She can't breathe without it." The pharmacist's face softened, but her hands didn't move toward the medication. "I understand, truly, but the system won't let me release it without full payment. Can you call someone? A family member?" Emma had no family. Her mother had died when she was 19. Her father had disappeared back to Mexico City when she was 12. Sophie's father was a mistake named Justin who'd left when the pregnancy test came back positive, said he wasn't ready to be a dad. Like readiness was a choice Emma had been given. "There's no one," Emma said quietly. "Then I'm very sorry, but I'll cover it." The voice came from behind Emma, male, smooth, carrying the kind of authority that rearranged rooms. She turned. The man was tall, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, wearing a coat that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. His face was interesting rather than handsome, all angles and old scars. The kind of face that suggested a biography Emma couldn't begin to guess. He stepped forward, pulled out a wallet made of leather that looked like it had opinions, extracted a black credit card. "No," Emma said immediately, pride flaring hot in her chest. "I don't need. Your daughter does." His eyes, dark and direct, held hers. "Let me help. I don't even know you." "Then know this." He placed the card on the counter. I watched someone steal from you today, and I'm in a position to make that right. Consider this a loan if it makes you feel better. Pay me back when you can." Emma stared at him, trying to decode the angle, the catch, the reason a stranger in an expensive coat would hand over $93.42 to a woman he'd never met. "I saw you," he said quietly, as if reading her suspicion. "In the Sterling distribution parking lot this afternoon. I saw your face when you opened your paycheck." Understanding arrived with a cold shock. "You work there?" "I'm an investor." He nodded to the pharmacist, who was watching this exchange with open fascination. "Run the card, please." The transaction processed in seconds. The pharmacist handed Emma the small white bag containing the inhaler that would let her daughter breathe. Emma took it, held it, felt the weight of charity and relief and shame mixing into something she didn't have a name for. "Thank you," she managed. "You're welcome." The man retrieved his card, but before he could leave, Emma grabbed his arm. "Why?" He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face, and something shifted in his expression. "Because someone should. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." He reached into his coat, pulled out a business card, placed it in her free hand. "My name is Damien Corso. If you decide you want a real answer, call that number." Emma looked at the card. Heavy, stock, minimalist design. Just a name and a phone number. No company, no title, nothing that explained who this man was or why he'd just bought her daughter's medication. "I'll pay you back," she said. "I know." He smiled, small and genuine. "You have the look of someone who always does." He left before Emma could ask what that look was, what he'd really seen in the parking lot, what kind of man appeared in pharmacies at night and paid for strangers' prescriptions. Sophie tugged on her hand. "Mama, who was that?" "I don't know, baby." Emma looked at the card again, at the name that sounded familiar in a way she couldn't place. "But we're going to find out." Damien Corso drove through Chicago with his mind divided between the road and the problem he'd just adopted. His phone rang. Marcus, his second in command, the man who handled the details Damien didn't have patience for. "Tell me about Emma Chen," Damien said by way of greeting. 28 years old, born in Chicago. Mother died in a car accident 9 years ago. Father's whereabouts unknown. One daughter, Sophie, age 6. Father not listed on the birth certificate. Chen's worked at Sterling Distribution for 2 years. Exemplary performance reviews. Never been written up. She's been living in the same apartment in Pilsen for 4 years. Pays her rent on time. Keeps to herself. Medical history? The daughter has asthma. Recurring respiratory issues. Chen's been to the ER 3 times in the last year with her. Always pays the bills eventually, but she's drowning in debt. Student loans from community college she never finished. Medical debt. She's 1 bad month away from disaster. Damien's jaw tightened. And Derek Voss? Warehouse manager at Sterling for 18 months. Before that, he worked at a competitor until they fired him. For Marcus paused. The kind of pause that meant bad news was choosing its words carefully. For sexual harassment. 3 complaints, settled internally. No criminal charges. Sterling hired him without checking his background thoroughly. Who authorized that hire? Regional manager. Kenneth Pratt. Damien knew that name. Pratt was the kind of executive who optimized for profit by eliminating what he called redundancies. Redundancies like background checks, like worker protections, like basic human decency. Is Voss stealing from other workers? Almost certainly. I'd need to audit the time card system, but based on preliminary patterns, he's been shaving hours for at least 6 months, targeting women with children, immigrants, anyone who won't fight back. How much total? Rough estimate? $40,000 to $50,000 over 6 months. Damien was quiet for 3 seconds, which was how long it took for his anger to calcify into strategy. Set up a meeting with Pratt. Monday morning. Tell him it's about operational efficiency. You're going to fire him. I'm going to make him wish I'd only fired him. Damien pulled into the underground garage of his building in River North. What about the time card system? Can we prove what Voss did? With the right forensic audit, yes. Deleted entries leave traces. I can have our tech people pull the logs by Monday. Do it. Damien stepped into his private elevator. And Marcus? Find out everything about Emma Chen's situation. Her landlord, her debts, her daughter's medical needs. I want a complete picture. Planning to get involved? I'm already involved. That's not usually how you operate. Maybe I'm tired of how I usually operate, Damien said, and ended the call before Marcus could point out that men like them didn't retire from their natures. They just found new ways to express them. His penthouse was 40 floors above the city, all glass and steel and carefully curated emptiness. He'd bought it because the view reminded him that Chicago was his in all the ways that mattered. He could see the river, the lake, the grid of lights representing a million lives he'd influenced without ever meeting. He poured himself a glass of whiskey he didn't want, and stood at the window thinking about a woman he'd watched for 5 minutes who'd managed to do something nobody had done in a decade. She'd made him feel ashamed, not of his wealth or his power, but of the fact that he'd built an empire and couldn't be bothered to notice when someone under his umbrella was drowning. He pulled out his phone, looked at the photo he'd taken in the parking lot. Emma Chen, holding a paycheck that should have been bigger, her face showing the exact moment hope calculates how much disappointment it can carry. He'd seen that expression before, on his mother's face, 30 years ago, when she'd worked 3 jobs to keep him and his sister fed, before the cancer took her, before he'd promised her grave that he'd never be powerless again. He'd kept that promise by building something that made other people powerless instead. Maybe it was time to build something different. His phone rang. An unknown number. He answered out of curiosity. "Mr. Corso?" A woman's voice, tentative but determined. "Emma Chen, speaking. I don't know why you helped me tonight, but I need you to know I wasn't asking for charity." "I know. And I will pay you back." "I know that too." Silence on the line. The kind where someone is building courage to say the thing they really called to say. "You said you saw what happened at Sterling today. With my paycheck." "I did. Can you prove it?" Damien smiled, the expression cold and satisfied. "Yes. Then I don't want your money." Her voice hardened in a way that made him respect her more. "I want you to prove what Derek Voss did. I want him to answer for stealing from me and probably every other worker he thinks won't fight back." "That," Damien said quietly, "can be arranged." "Why would you do that? You're an investor. This doesn't benefit you. Maybe I'm tired of investing in things that hurt. People." He moved away from the window, sat down, settled in for a conversation that might change trajectories. Or maybe I'm just angry that someone stole from a woman who was already down, and I'm in a position to make him regret it. I don't need a savior. Good. I'm not volunteering for the position. Damien's voice was honest in a way that surprised him. I'm offering you an alliance. You want justice. I want to clean up a company I own part of. Those interests align. What's the catch? The catch is that when I move against Voss, it's going to get ugly. He's going to fight. The company might push back. You might become a target. I'm already a target, Emma said. At least this way I'm aiming back. Damien felt something shift in his chest. A recognition of kinship with someone whose life looked nothing like his but whose spine was made of the same material. Then let's aim together, he said. Come to my office Monday morning, 9 o'clock. I'll show you what I've found, and we'll decide how to burn it all down. I work Mondays, 6 to 2. Not anymore. Call in sick. I can't afford to, Emma. He used her first name deliberately, an intimacy he hadn't earned but needed. You can't afford not to. This is bigger than one day's wages. This is about taking back what's yours and making sure he never steals from anyone again. She was quiet for a long moment. What's your office address? He gave it. She wrote it down. He heard Sophie coughing in the background, heard Emma's voice soften as she told her daughter to use the new inhaler. Thank you, she said quietly. For tonight. For listening. For believing me. You don't need to thank me for basic decency. You'd be surprised how rare basic decency is. The line went dead. Damien sat in his expensive penthouse looking at the city he'd conquered, thinking about a woman in a studio apartment in Pilsen who'd just taught him something about power. Real power, he realized, wasn't making people afraid. It was making them brave enough to fight back. He made another call. Marcus, I need you to prepare a file for Monday. Everything on Derek Voss, the time card system, and every wage violation at Sterling Distribution for the past year. Going to war? Already in it, Damien said. I'm just choosing which battlefield. He hung up and returned to the window, watching Chicago glitter in the dark, thinking about the kind of justice that happens when someone who can't afford lawyers meets someone who can afford anything. This, he thought, was going to be interesting. Emma woke up Saturday with Sophie breathing easier and her own breathing harder from the weight of the decision she'd made. She was going to fight Derek Voss. She was going to trust a stranger with an expensive coat and eyes that had seen too much. She was going to walk into whatever Monday brought and hope she survived it. But first, she had to survive the weekend. Saturday, It meant laundry at the building's basement machines, quarters she'd been saving in a jar. It meant grocery shopping with coupons and calculations, buying the things that stretched: rice, beans, eggs, the vegetables that were bruised enough to be on sale. Sophie helped her shop, standing on the cart's bottom rack like it was an adventure, calling out prices from the shelf tags in a voice that turned arithmetic into music. "Mama, this one is 2 for $5. Is that good?" "That's very good, baby. Put 2 in the cart." They were in the cereal aisle when Emma's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus, assistant to Damien Corso. Mr. Corso wanted me to confirm your meeting Monday at 9 a.m. Address attached. Please let me know if you need transportation arranged." Transportation arranged. As if Emma had options beyond the bus or her own 2 feet. She texted back, "I'll be there." Another buzz. "Mr. Corso also wanted me to inform you that you'll be compensated for missing your shift Monday. $200, deposited to your account tonight. Consider it a consulting fee." Emma stared at the message, at the casual mention of $200, at the assumption that she'd accept payment for something she hadn't agreed to yet. She should refuse. Should tell this Marcus and his Mr. Corso that she wasn't for sale, that her fight was about principle, not profit. But $200 meant Sophie could have the expensive cereal, the one with the cartoon character. Meant Emma could refill the prescription for real this time, not with borrowed money. Meant they could afford to exist for a few more days without choosing between electricity and food. "Thank you," she texted, hating how easy it was to compromise when survival required it. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Emma sat on their fire escape with a cup of tea that had been reused 3 times and researched Damien Corso on her phone. The internet knew him in pieces: investor, philanthropist, owner of restaurants and real estate and companies that made things she'd never heard of. There were photos of him at charity galas, always in expensive suits, always alone or with business partners, never with women who looked like they mattered. There were also rumors, the kind that lived in comment sections and Reddit threads. Connections to Chicago's old families, the ones who'd built empires on prohibition and never really left. Whispers about how his investments were too successful, his negotiations too persuasive, his enemies too quiet. Emma read between the lines and saw the shape of what people were implying without saying. Damien Corso was connected. To what, the internet wouldn't specify, but the space around his name had the weight of things people were afraid to accuse out loud. She should be terrified, should recognize this as a trap, a powerful man using a desperate woman for purposes she couldn't see. Instead, she thought about his face in the pharmacy, the way he handed over his card without performing generosity, without demanding gratitude. The way he'd said someone should like it was the simplest truth in the world. And she thought about Derek Voss, deleting her hours with a few taps on a screen, smiling while he stole her ability to keep her daughter breathing. If Damien Corso was dangerous, maybe that's exactly what she needed. Emma finished her tea, went inside, and set her alarm for 4:30. Monday was coming, and she was going to meet it head-on. Monday arrived with rain that felt personal, the kind that found every gap in Emma's umbrella and reminded her that the world didn't care about important days. She'd called Sterling at 5 that morning, left a voicemail saying she was sick, felt the lie sit wrong in her mouth. She'd never called in sick, never missed a shift. Her attendance record was perfect, because perfect was the only armor women like her had. Mrs. Kim agreed to watch Sophie with the confusion of someone whose routine had been disrupted. "You sick? You look okay." "I have an appointment," Emma said, which was true enough. "I'll pick her up by noon." She took 2 buses to get to River North, to the part of Chicago where buildings competed with each other for height and importance. Damien Corso's office was in a tower that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought glass could solve loneliness. The lobby was marble and minimalism, the kind of space that made Emma immediately aware of her Target blouse and her shoes that had been resoled twice. A security guard directed her to the elevators with the bored efficiency of someone who saw 1,000 nervous people a day. 32nd floor, Corso Investments. The elevator was faster than Emma's stomach could process. Her ears popped. The doors opened onto a reception area that smelled like expensive leather and quiet power. A woman in her 30s, black, with the kind of beauty that came from perfect bone structure and knowing it, looked up from a desk that probably cost more than Emma's car had, back when Emma had owned a car. "Emma Chen?" "Yes, I'm Simone." "Mr. Corso is expecting you." She stood, gestured toward a hallway lined with abstract art that Emma suspected was real and therefore unaffordable. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Emma followed her, taking in the offices they passed. Floor-to-ceiling windows, people in clothes that announced their salaries, the quiet hum of money making more money. Simone stopped at a door at the end of the hall, knocked once, opened it without waiting for an answer. Miss Chen is here. Damien Corso stood at a window overlooking the city, hands in his pockets, looking like a photograph from a magazine about successful men who'd conquered something. He turned when Emma entered, and his face did something she hadn't expected. It softened. Emma, thank you for coming. He gestured to a seating area that was less corporate, more like someone's very expensive. Living room, leather chairs, a coffee table with documents already spread across it. Please, sit. Emma sat because her legs needed the support. Damien took the chair across from her, and another man emerged from a side door. Shorter, stockier, with the kind of face that suggested he'd been handsome before life had disagreed. This is Marcus, Damien said. My head of operations. He's been conducting the audit I mentioned. Marcus nodded at Emma with an expression that might have been respect or might have been sympathy. Hard to tell. Miss Chen, what Derek Voss did to you isn't isolated. Marcus sat down, opened a laptop, turned it so Emma could see the screen. We pulled the time card logs from Sterling's system for the past 8 months. Voss has been systematically deleting hours from 43 different workers. The screen showed a spreadsheet, names and numbers that represented stolen time, stolen money, stolen dignity. Emma's eyes scanned the list, recognizing names. Maria, Letitia, Kim. Women she worked beside, women who'd been stolen from just like her. How much total? Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. $62,000 over 8 months, Marcus said. He targets women, primarily single mothers and immigrants. People he assumes won't fight back because they can't afford to lose their jobs. Emma's hands curled into fists. Can you prove this in court? Yes. Digital footprints don't lie, and Voss isn't sophisticated enough to cover his tracks properly. Marcus pulled up another screen. Every deletion is logged with his user credentials, time-stamped, traceable. Then we go to the police, file charges. Wage theft is illegal. Damien leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes on hers. We can do that, but police investigations take months. The company will bury it in legal maneuvers. Voss might get fired, might pay a fine, might even spend a few months in minimum security if we're lucky, but the women he stole from won't. See their money for a year or more, if they see it at all. Emma's stomach dropped. So he gets away with it. Not what I said. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Damien's voice carried an edge that made the air in the room sharper. I'm saying there's a faster way, a more effective way, but it requires you to trust me to handle this outside the system that failed you in the first place. Emma looked at him, at this man who lived 40 floors above consequences, who wore watches that cost more than her annual rent, who was offering to fix her problem in ways she suspected weren't entirely legal. What do you want in return? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus glanced at Damien with an expression that said he'd been wondering the same thing. Damien stood, walked back to the window, spoke to the city instead of to Emma. When I was 12, my mother worked in a factory in Bridgeport, textile manufacturing. She'd come home with her fingers bleeding from the machines, and when she complained about the conditions, the supervisor cut her hours. Said she was a troublemaker. She needed that job, so she stopped complaining. He turned back to face Emma. 6 months later, the factory burned down. Faulty wiring the owner knew about but didn't fix because safety costs money. 23 women died, including my mother. The owner paid a fine and opened a new factory in Indiana. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition that she was sitting in a room with someone whose anger had a foundation. I built what I have by promising myself I'd never be powerless again, Damien continued. And somewhere along the way, I became the kind of person who owns pieces of companies without bothering to check if they're hurting people. I saw you in that parking lot, saw your face, and realized I'd become the owner who doesn't fix the wiring. So, this is about your guilt, Emma said, not unkindly. Partially. He returned to his chair, sat down, met her eyes with an honesty that felt expensive. But it's also about the fact that you called me Friday night and asked me to prove what Voss did instead of asking for more money. You wanted justice, not charity. That's rare. That matters. What do you want from me? Emma asked again, needing the terms clear. I want you to let me make this right in a way that actually fixes things, Damien said. Today, I'm going to Sterling Distribution with Marcus. We're going to confront Voss and the regional manager who hired him. We're going to present the audit findings and give them a choice. Pay back every stolen dollar immediately, fire Voss and Pratt without severance, and implement new oversight systems, or I pull my investment and they lose the capital that's keeping them solvent. That's extortion, Emma said. That's leverage. Damien's smile was cold. Extortion would be threatening them with things that aren't true. Everything I'm threatening is simply the consequence of their own actions. Marcus closed his laptop. We need you there. The audit proves the systemic theft, but your testimony makes it personal, makes it harder for them to dismiss as a simple accounting error. Emma's heart was racing. If I do this, Voss will know I came after him. He could retaliate. He could try, Damien said quietly, and something in his voice made it clear that trying would be the last mistake Voss ever made. But you won't be alone. You'll have documentation, witnesses, and legal protection. And if he's stupid enough to retaliate, I'll make sure he regrets it in ways that keep him awake at night. The threat was delivered calmly, almost gently, which somehow made it more terrifying. Emma thought about Sophie, about the inhaler that had cost $93, about Maria and Letitia and all the other women whose hours had been stolen, whose children had gone without because someone decided their labor was disposable. When do we leave? She asked. Damien's expression shifted. Approval, mixing with something that looked almost like relief. Now, they took Damien's car, a black sedan that was so quiet inside it felt like moving through water. Marcus drove. Damien sat in the back with Emma, a leather briefcase between them containing the evidence that would dismantle Derek Voss's comfortable theft. When we get there, Damien said, let me do most of the talking. If they ask you direct questions, answer honestly. Don't embellish. Don't soften. Just tell them exactly what happened. I know how to tell the truth, Emma said. I know. But sometimes the truth is so ugly people try to make it prettier, more palatable. Don't. Let it be as ugly as it is. The warehouse looked different in daylight, less like the place Emma spent 40 hours a week and more like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. Marcus parked in the visitor lot, the kind reserved for people important enough to have their arrival announced. Inside, the receptionist recognized Emma immediately, confusion flickering across her face. Emma, you're not on the schedule today. I'm here with Mr. Corso, Emma said, and watched the woman's expression change from confusion to nervousness. Let Kenneth Pratt know Damien Corso is here to see him, Damien said, his voice carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. And Derek Voss? Conference room. 5 minutes. The receptionist reached for her phone with hands that had started to shake. Of course. Right away. They were led to a conference room with glass walls that looked out onto the warehouse floor. Emma could see her station, the conveyor belt, the women working in the rhythm she knew by heart. Some of them glanced up, saw her standing with men in expensive suits, and the questions bloomed across their faces. Kenneth Pratt arrived first. 50-something, gray hair, suit slightly too tight, the look of a man who'd been comfortable for too long. His smile was professional, practiced, hiding the nervousness Emma could see in his eyes. Mr. Corso, this is unexpected. I thought we weren't scheduled for a review until— Sit down, Kenneth. Damien's voice wasn't loud, but Pratt sat immediately, the command bypassing his brain and going straight to his spine. Derek Voss arrived 30 seconds later, confident, annoyed at being pulled from the floor, not yet understanding that his comfortable world was about to end. He saw Emma and his face did something complicated. What's this about? Voss asked, remaining standing when he should have sat. Time theft, Marcus said simply, opening his briefcase, pulling out the printed audit report. Systematic wage theft committed by you over the past 8 months against 43 employees of this facility. Voss laughed, the sound forced. That's a serious accusation. You have proof? We have your digital fingerprints all over deleted time entries. Marcus slid the report across the table. Every deletion logged, with your user ID. Timestamps, amounts, employee names. You've stolen $62,000 from your own workers. Pratt picked up the report, his face going pale as he read. Derek, what is this? It's bullshit. Voss's confidence was cracking, anger seeping through. The system makes errors. I correct them. You deleted my hours, Emma said, her voice cutting through his bluster. Wednesday. I worked until 4. You asked me to stay late. Then you deleted everything past 2 and told me the system was wrong. You're lying. The system logs say otherwise, Marcus said. They show you accessing her time card at 3:47 p.m. Wednesday and deleting 2 hours and 2 minutes from her shift. That's $143 stolen from a single mother whose daughter has asthma. Emma watched Voss's face cycle through denial, calculation, fear. She probably clocked out wrong. I was fixing. Don't. Damien's single word hit like a gavel. Don't insult our intelligence by continuing to lie when we have documentation. You're caught, Derek. The only question now is what happens next. Pratt was reading the report with growing horror, his finger tracing down the list of names, the stolen amounts. If this is accurate, it is, Marcus said. Then we'll conduct an internal investigation, and if warranted, appropriate disciplinary action. No. Damien leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual power. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay back every stolen dollar to every affected worker by end of business today. You're going to fire Derek Voss immediately without severance. You're going to fire yourself, Kenneth, because you hired him without proper vetting after he was fired from his last job for sexual harassment. Pratt's face went from pale to gray. You can't force me to resign. I have a contract. You have a contract with a company I own 15% of, Damien said, and I'm prepared to pull my buy investment today unless you comply. Sterling Distribution operates on thin margins. Without my capital, you'll be bankrupt in 3 months. Your choice. This is extortion. This is capitalism, Damien corrected. You can comply with my reasonable demands, or you can explain to your board of directors why you let a manager steal from workers for 8 months, hired him despite his history, and then lost the company's largest investor because you were too proud to admit you failed. Silence filled the room like water, drowning everyone's certainty. Voss stood abruptly. You can't prove I intended to steal. It could be incompetence, not malice. True, Damien agreed. Which is why I'm not calling the police. I'm just telling your boss to fire you and return money to the workers you accidentally stole from through your incompetence. That seems fair, doesn't it? The logic was a trap, and Voss had walked into it by arguing for his own negligence as a defense. Pratt set down the report, with shaking hands. I need to consult with corporate counsel. You have until noon, Damien said, checking his watch. It's currently 9:43. That gives you 2 hours and 17 minutes to make the right choice. After that, I file a formal complaint with the Department of Labor, pull my investment, and make sure every business publication in Chicago knows that Sterling Distribution systematically steals from workers. The publicity alone would destroy us, Pratt whispered. Then make the smart choice, Damien stood, buttoning his jacket with the casual confidence of someone who'd already won. Emma, let's give them some privacy to discuss. Emma followed Damien and Marcus out of the conference room, her legs unsteady, her heart hammering against her ribs. They walked past the reception area, past her co-workers who were pretending not to stare, out into the parking lot, where the autumn sun felt too bright after the fluorescent doom of the conference room. What happens if they say no? Emma asked. They won't, Marcus said with certainty. But if they do? Damien looked at her with eyes that had seen worse games and won them. Then I make their lives very uncomfortable until they wish they'd said yes. Companies like Sterling survive on credit, contracts, and reputation. I can damage all 3 with a few phone calls. That's terrifying, Emma said. Yes, Damien agreed. But so is stealing from women who can't afford to fight back. Sometimes you need to be terrifying to stop terrifying things. They waited in the car. Marcus made phone calls, his voice a low murmur in the front seat. Damien sat beside Emma in silence, the kind that felt less awkward than companionable. Thank you, Emma said finally. You already thanked me. I'm thanking you again, for believing me, for caring enough to do something. Damien turned to look at her, his expression complicated. I told you about my mother. What I didn't tell you is that after she died, I spent 10 years being angry at the wrong things, angry at the fire, at the city inspectors who'd missed the violations, at God for letting it happen. But the real problem was simpler. A man decided profit mattered more than safety. One decision, repeated enough times, killed 23 women. He gestured back at the warehouse. Derek Voss made the same decision. Your safety, your daughter's medication, your ability to survive. He decided all of that mattered less than whatever he was doing with the money he stole. So yes, I care enough to do something. Because if I don't, I'm just another owner who doesn't fix the wiring. Emma felt something shift in her understanding of this man. He wasn't a savior or a villain. He was someone trying to atone for survivals other people didn't get. What were you doing with the money? Emma asked suddenly. If you were stealing like Voss, what would you use it for? Power, Damien said honestly. I'd use it to make myself more secure, more untouchable, more safe. Because when you grow up powerless, you spend the rest of your life trying to make sure you never feel that way again. And then you become the thing you were afraid of. Exactly. He smiled, sad and self-aware. Somewhere between my mother's funeral and my first million, I stopped being the boy who needed protection and became the man everyone else needed protection from. So what changed? Emma asked. Why help me? Why care now? Damien was quiet for a long moment, watching workers enter and exit the warehouse, living their invisible lives. I saw your face in that parking lot and remembered my mother's face the night before the fire. The same expression, the same calculation of how much dignity you can trade for survival. And I realized that if I own a piece of the company that put that expression on your face, then I'm responsible for it. Before Emma could respond, Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, hung up. Pratt's lawyer just called. They're agreeing to all terms. Voss is fired effective immediately. Pratt is resigning. And they're cutting checks to all affected workers for stolen wages, plus 20% as compensation for the delay. 20%? Emma blinked. You didn't ask for that. I did, Marcus said with a small smile. While you were in the conference room, I sent their lawyer the audit plus a calculation of emotional damages, legal fees you could theoretically pursue, and potential punitive damages. 20% was the compromise. Damien looked at Emma. That means you're getting approximately $172 instead of $143. Same for everyone else on the list. Emma did the math in her head. 43 workers, stolen wages plus 20%. That's over $70,000. Sounds right, Marcus said. They're really paying it? By end of business today. Direct deposit to everyone's accounts. You'll see it tomorrow morning. Marcus started the car. Want to watch Voss get walked out? Emma thought about it. Thought about the satisfaction of seeing the man who'd stolen from her, from Maria, from all of them, carrying his personal items in a box while security escorted him to the parking lot. Thought about how that satisfaction would taste. No, she said finally. I just want to go home to my daughter. Damien nodded as if she'd passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. Marcus, take us back to the office. Emma's car is there. I took the bus, Emma said. Then Marcus will drive you home. That's not necessary, Emma. Damien's voice was gentle but firm. You just took on your employer and won. Let yourself have the small victory of not taking the bus home. She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, prove she didn't need his help, his car, his money, but she was tired, bone tired, soul tired, and the idea of sitting on a bus for an hour, alone with her thoughts and her adrenaline, felt impossible. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. They drove back through Chicago in silence, Marcus navigating traffic with the ease of someone who'd driven these streets 1,000 times. Damien's phone rang twice. He ignored it both times. When they pulled up to Emma's building in Pilsen, she gathered her purse, her courage, turned to face Damien. What happens now? Now you go back to work tomorrow, if you want to. Or you take a few days, process everything that happened. Either way, Sterling owes you money, and they'll deliver it. Will they retaliate? Not if they're smart. I'm having Marcus draft an agreement that includes a clause preventing any disciplinary action against workers who were affected by the wage theft. You're protected. What about you? Emma asked. You just made powerful people very angry. Do they retaliate against you? Damien's smile was sharp enough to cut. They can try. But I've been dealing with angry, powerful people my entire life. Kenneth Pratt and Sterling Distribution. They're minor league compared to what I usually handle. Emma believed him. She'd seen enough in the past 2 hours to understand that Damien Corso operated in worlds where the rules were different, where power was currency and mercy was strategic. I still owe you $93.42, Emma said, for the pharmacy. Keep it. Use it for Sophie's next prescription refill. That's not how debt works. It is when I say it is. Damien's expression softened. Emma, you don't owe me anything. But if it makes you feel better, consider it paid back by you trusting me enough to get in the car this morning. Emma studied his face, looking for the angle, the manipulation, The hidden cost. She didn't find it. She found something more complicated. Genuine care wrapped in a man who didn't know how to express it without making it a transaction. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said. "Anything. Are you a good man?" The question sat between them like a third passenger. Marcus pretended to be very interested in his phone. Damien didn't look away, didn't deflect. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm trying to be a better one." Emma nodded, accepting the answer for what it was. "Incomplete, imperfect, true." "Then I guess we're the same," she said, trying. She got out of the car, walked up the steps to her building, turned back to wave. Damien was watching her from the car window, his expression unreadable. When she picked up Sophie from Mrs. Kim, her daughter launched herself into Emma's arms with the full force of 6-year-old relief. "Mama, you're back. I missed you." "I missed you too, baby." Emma buried her face in her daughter's hair, breathed in watermelon shampoo and safety. "Did the doctor make you all better?" Emma thought about the question, about what better meant, about how much had changed in a single morning. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Emma checked her phone and found a text from an unknown number. "This is Damien. I wanted to make sure you got home safely." She stared at the message, at the casual concern from a man who dismantled her oppressor with the efficiency of someone who did it regularly. "Home safe. Thank you. For everything." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You're welcome. Sleep well, Emma." She did. For the first time in months, she slept without calculating costs, without weighing choices, without the crushing weight of impossible mathematics. She slept like a woman who'd fought back and won. Emma returned to Sterling Distribution on Tuesday with her head high and her stomach churning. The warehouse looked the same gray walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of cardboard and industry, but something fundamental had shifted. Derek Voss was gone. His office stood empty, the desk cleared, the walls bare. Kenneth Pratt was gone too, his resignation announced in a terse email sent company-wide Monday evening. The new interim manager was a woman named Patricia Reeves, flown in from corporate, 50-something with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen enough nonsense to be unimpressed by all of it. She called an all-staff meeting at 6:15, before the morning shift officially started. The workers gathered in the break room, cramped and confused, whispering theories. Emma stood near the back, trying to be invisible, failing because Maria grabbed her arm the moment she walked in. "Is it true?" Maria hissed in Spanish. "Did you get Voss fired? How did you—" "Everyone knows. Lisa from receiving saw you with men in suits yesterday. Then Voss gets walked out by security an hour later." Maria's eyes were wide, excited, terrified. "Emma, what did you do?" Before Emma could answer, Patricia Reeves cleared her throat. The room fell silent with the speed of people who'd learned to obey authority or suffer consequences. "I'm Patricia Reeves, your new manager while we restructure operations. I'm here because this facility has had serious leadership failures." She didn't sugarcoat, didn't perform sympathy. "Some of you have been victims of wage theft. Systematic, deliberate theft of your time and your money by Derek Voss, enabled by inadequate oversight from Kenneth Pratt." The room erupted. Voices overlapping, shock and anger and the particular fury of people who'd suspected but couldn't prove. "How much? Who else knew? Are we getting our money back?" Patricia raised one hand. Silence returned, slower this time. "You're getting every dollar stolen from you, plus 20% additional compensation. Direct deposits will hit your accounts this morning. Additionally, anyone who wants to review their time cards from the past 8 months can do so with me personally. We're implementing new systems to prevent this from ever happening again." "Who reported it?" someone called out. Patricia's eyes found Emma in the crowd. Someone brave enough to fight back. Every head in the room turned. Emma felt 40 pairs of Lada. Eyes land on her like physical weight. The air in the room changed temperature. Maria squeezed her arm. "You did this?" "I had help," Emma said quietly. "You had courage," Patricia corrected, her voice cutting across the murmurs. Emma Chen stood up when it would have been easier and safer to stay quiet. "She did what we all hope we'd do, and most of us never manage. She fought for herself, and for all of you." The room was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then someone started clapping. Emma couldn't see who. Then Maria joined. Then the woman to Emma's right. Then everyone. The sound building until the small break room rang with applause that felt less like celebration and more like release. Emma felt her face heat, felt tears prick her eyes. felt something enormous and fragile bloom in her chest. Patricia let it go on for 10 seconds, then raised her hand again. All right. We have work to do. But know this. Things are different now. You have a voice here. Use it. The meeting ended. People filtered toward their stations, but several stopped to touch Emma's shoulder, to whisper thank you in English and Spanish and Vietnamese. Maria hugged her so hard, Emma's ribs protested. You're a hero, Maria said, tears streaming down her face. I'm just tired of being stolen from, Emma replied. Same thing sometimes. Emma worked her shift in a daze, her hands moving through the familiar motions while her mind tried to process what had happened. She'd expected retaliation, hostility, blame. Instead, she'd received gratitude. At 10, her phone buzzed, a notification from her bank. Direct deposit, $172 from Sterling Distribution LLC. Memo, wage adjustment. Emma stared at the number, at the proof that Damien Corso had done exactly what he'd promised. She checked her account balance. With the consulting fee from yesterday and this payment, she had enough for Sophie's next 3 inhaler refills, for groceries that weren't calculations, for electricity without guilt. She wanted to cry. She wanted to call Damien and thank him again. She wanted to believe this was real and not a dream that would evaporate when she woke up at 4:30 tomorrow. Instead, she packed handbags into boxes and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Damien Corso sat in his office reviewing reports that should have held his attention and didn't. His mind was in Pilsen, in a studio apartment with a 6-year-old who liked watermelon shampoo, and a mother who'd looked at him like she was trying to decode whether he was salvation or another kind of trap. Marcus entered without knocking, which meant something was wrong. We have a problem. Damien looked up. Describe. Victor Castellano knows about Sterling. The name hit Damien like cold water. Victor Castellano, rival investor, connected to the Southside families, the kind of man who viewed business as warfare and warfare as entertainment. How? Kenneth Pratt called him. Before his resignation was finalized, he reached out to Castellano and offered him information about your involvement in his firing, your leverage tactics, your interest in the warehouse operations. Marcus sat down heavily. Castellano sees an opportunity. To do what? Undermine your legitimate holdings. Make it look like you're using criminal methods to manipulate markets. He's already started rumors that you threaten Pratt, that you're using Sterling as a front for money laundering. Damien's jaw tightened. None of that is true. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in our world. If Castellano convinces the right people you're operating recklessly, your other investments become vulnerable. Boards get nervous. Partners start asking questions. Let them ask. I did nothing illegal at Sterling. You threatened to pull investment unless they complied with your demands. That's legal, yes, but it's also the exact kind of aggressive tactic that feeds the narrative Castellano wants to build. Marcus pulled out his tablet, showed Damien a news article. This ran an hour ago. The headline read, Chicago investor Damien Corso under scrutiny for aggressive business tactics. The article was vague, citing unnamed sources and industry insiders concerned about unorthodox methods and potential conflicts of interest. It didn't name Sterling Distribution specifically, but it didn't have to. Anyone in Chicago's business community would know what it was referencing. Castellano planted this, Damien said. Definitely, and he won't stop here. He's going to push until you have to respond, and any response gives him more ammunition. You defend yourself. You look guilty. You stay silent. You look weak. Damien stood, walked to his window, looked out at the city he'd spent 20 years conquering. What does he want? Your legitimate ventures. If he can damage your reputation in the clean business world, you're forced back into the shadows full-time. Which means he gets to expand into the spaces you vacate. So this is territorial. Always is with Castellano. He doesn't care about Sterling or Emma Chen. He cares about knocking you down a level. Damien thought about Emma's face in his car, the question she'd asked with absolute directness. Are you a good man? He'd answered honestly. No, but he was trying to be better. Going to war with Victor Castellano would require him to be worse. Set up a meeting, Damien said quietly. With Castellano. Neutral ground. Tomorrow. Marcus looked surprised. You're going to negotiate? I'm going to give him a chance to walk away before I make him wish he had. And if he doesn't take it? Damien's reflection in the window was cold, certain. Then I remind him why people were afraid of me before I started pretending to be civilized. That evening, Emma was making dinner spaghetti with marinara from a jar, garlic bread from the discount bakery when her phone rang. Damien's name on the screen. She answered, her stomach doing something complicated. Hello? Emma, I'm sorry to call during dinner hour. It's okay. Sophie's coloring. What's wrong? Because something was wrong. She could hear it in his voice. There might be some blowback from what we did at Sterling. A business rival of mine is using it as leverage to attack my other investments. I wanted you to know in case reporters contact you. Emma felt ice form in her chest. Reporters? Possibly. They'll want your version of events, want to paint me as either a hero or a villain depending on which narrative sells better. Damien paused. I'm calling to tell you that you don't owe me anything. If reporters ask, tell them the truth, whatever that truth is for you. The truth is you helped me get back money that was stolen from me. The truth is also that I used aggressive tactics to force a company to comply with my demands. Both things can be true. Emma stirred the spaghetti, thinking. Who's attacking you? His name is Victor Castellano, another investor. He sees an opportunity to make me look reckless, damage my reputation. Because you helped me. Because I made waves he can ride. Damien's voice was careful, measured. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you regret this? Getting involved? Fighting back? Because if you do, I can make this go away. I can settle with Castellano. Smooth things over. Make sure you're not caught in the crossfire. Emma looked at Sophie, bent over her coloring book, tongue poking out in concentration, looked at the inhaler on the counter, the one they could afford now, looked at the groceries in the cabinet that weren't calculations anymore. No, she said firmly, I don't regret it. Derek Voss stole from me, from my co-workers, from our children. You helped us get justice. If some business rival wants to twist that into something ugly, that's his problem, not mine. She heard Damien exhale, something like relief. You're certain? I'm certain. Do what you need to do. I'll handle my end. Thank you. A pause. Emma, when this is over, if you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, not a transaction or a business meeting, just dinner. Emma's heart did something acrobatic. Why? Because I'd like to know you better. The you that exists outside of crises and stolen wages. His voice softened. Because you asked me if I was a good man, and I'd like to be good enough to deserve an evening of your time. Emma smiled, despite the complications, despite the danger, despite every logical reason to say no. Ask me again when this is over. I will. After they hung up, Emma stood in her small kitchen with spaghetti boiling over and something warm and terrifying growing in her chest. She was falling for Damien Corso, for a man who lived in a different world, who had enemies that planted stories in newspapers, who'd admitted he wasn't good but was trying to be better. She was falling for him, and it was the least practical thing she'd ever done. Mama, is the pasta done? Sophie called. Yes, baby. Come eat. They ate dinner on their second-hand couch, Sophie chattering about Mrs. Kim's cat, about the new girl in her class, about everything and nothing. Emma listened and smiled and tried not to think about reporters or business rivals, or the fact that fighting back had consequences she hadn't fully calculated. But she'd do it again. Even knowing what it cost, she'd do it again. Damien met Victor Castellano at a restaurant in the Loop, the kind of place that catered to men discussing things that weren't quite legal over steaks that cost what some people made in a week. Castellano was already seated, 50-something, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of handsome that came from good genes and better cosmetic work. He smiled when Damien approached, all teeth, no warmth. Damien, you're looking well. Reformation suits you. Damien sat without shaking hands. Victor, still compensating for something with the cologne? Castellano laughed, genuinely delighted. I missed this. The banter. Ever since you went legitimate, you've been so boring. I'm here to ask you to stop spreading rumors about Sterling distribution. I'm here to eat a very good ribeye and watch you squirm. Castellano sipped his wine. You made a mistake, Damien. You got involved personally. You threatened a manager, manipulated a company, all because some woman with a sob story batted her eyes at you. Emma Chen didn't bat anything. She was stolen from, and I corrected it. You corrected it by being exactly the kind of criminal you've spent 5 years pretending you're not. Castellano leaned forward. That warehouse, those workers, that manager, none of them matter to me. But watching you compromise your carefully constructed legitimacy? That's entertaining. What do you want, Victor? Your South Loop properties. The 3 buildings you bought last year. Sign them over to me. I'll make the sterling rumors disappear. Damien had expected this. Castellano never moved without clear objectives. Those properties are worth 12 million. Then consider it an expensive lesson in staying out of other people's business. Or, Damien said quietly, I could decline your offer and make your life very uncomfortable. You could try. Castellano's smile sharpened. But I have something you don't anymore, Damien. I'm still willing to get my hands dirty. You've gone soft. You help warehouse workers, donate to charities, pretend you're some reformed mobster. But we both know what you are. What we both are. Men who take what we want and destroy anything in our way. I used to be that. Damien met Castellano's eyes. I'm choosing to be something else. Choice is a luxury, and luxuries get expensive when people like me decide to make them so. Castellano stood, dropped his napkin on the table. You have 48 hours to transfer the properties. After that, I go to the press with a much more detailed story about your activities at Sterling. Names, dates, recordings of Pratt describing how you threatened him. Pratt signed an NDA, which I paid him to violate. See? Still getting my hands dirty. Castellano buttoned his jacket. 48 hours, Damien. Choose your future carefully. He left. Damien sat alone at the table, his untouched water glass reflecting distorted ceiling lights, his mind calculating options. He could give Castellano the properties, could buy peace, protect Emma from becoming collateral damage, return to his quiet reformation without this complication. Or he could fight. Could remind Victor Castellano and everyone else watching that Damien Corso hadn't gone soft, he'd just been polite. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Sophie wants to know if you like macaroni art. Apparently she's making you a thank you card. A photo followed. A construction. Paper card covered in glued macaroni spelling out, thank you in crooked letters, decorated with marker drawings of what might have been flowers or possibly aliens. Damien stared at the photo, at this pure, uncomplicated gratitude from a 6-year-old who didn't know about business rivals or property wars or the cost of helping people. He texted back, I love macaroni art. Tell Sophie I'll treasure it. Emma. She's very excited. How did your meeting go? Damien considered lying, protecting her from the weight of what was happening. Decided she deserved better than protection that looked like exclusion. Not well. He wants me to give up properties worth 12 million, or he'll make things difficult for both of us. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. What are you going to do? Damien looked at Sophie's macaroni card, at the crooked letters that represented innocence and trust, and everything he was supposed to protect by being practical, by surrendering, by letting Castellano win. He typed, I'm going to make things difficult for him instead. Emma, be careful. Always. He left the restaurant and made a phone call. Marcus, I need you to dig up everything on Victor Castellano. Every business dealing, every shady contract, every skeleton. I want ammunition. You're going to war? He started it. I'm finishing it. This could get messy. Good, Damien said, his voice cold with the certainty of someone who'd remembered what he was before he'd started pretending to be civilized. Messy is what I'm good at. The war lasted 3 days. Damien didn't pull triggers or break bones. He didn't need to. He pulled contracts, broke partnerships, and made phone calls that rearranged Victor Castellano's comfortable world. By Wednesday morning, Castellano's largest investor had withdrawn funding. By Wednesday afternoon, his permits for 2 major developments were suddenly under regulatory review. By Wednesday evening, the IRS had received an anonymous tip about an anonymous tip about discrepancies in his corporate tax filings. All legal, all devastating, all traceable back to Damien Corso if you knew where to look. Castellano called Thursday at noon. You made your point. Have I? Damien stood at his office window, watching Chicago sprawl beneath him. Because my point was that threatening me over helping stolen workers get their wages back was a mistake. I'm not sure you've learned that lesson yet. The South Loop properties. Keep them. The Sterling rumors stopped today. Not good enough. Damien's voice was ice. You apologize publicly. You admit you spread false information. And you never come near Emma Chen or anyone connected to her again. Silence on the line. Then, grudgingly. Agreed. Good. And Victor? If you ever mistake my kindness for weakness again, I won't just make your business uncomfortable, I'll make it disappear. He hung up before Castellano could respond. Marcus appeared in his doorway. It's done. Castellano's putting out a statement this afternoon correcting the record. Good. Damien felt the tension that had been living in his shoulders for 3 days finally release. What's the damage on our end? Minimal. You burned some political capital, called in favors you were saving, but nothing that can't be rebuilt. Then we're fine. Marcus studied him. You did all this for her, for Emma. It wasn't a question, but Damien answered anyway. I did it because it was right. That's new for you. Maybe I'm tired of being who I was. Damien grabbed his coat. I'm taking the rest of the day off. Where are you going? To deliver a macaroni card thank you in person. Emma was hanging laundry on the fire escape when her phone rang. Damien's name made her heart do that complicated thing again. The war's over, he said without preamble. Castellano backed down. You're safe. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm downstairs. Can I come up? Emma looked at the laundry, at her apartment that was clean but small, at her life that was ordinary and honest and nothing like his world. Yes. He arrived 5 minutes later, still wearing his expensive suit but somehow looking less intimidating in her narrow hallway. Sophie peeked out from behind Emma's legs, suddenly shy. You must be Sophie, Damien said, crouching to her level. Your mom showed me the card you made. It's beautiful. Sophie beamed, shyness evaporating. Do you really like macaroni? I love it. Especially when it spells thank you. Mama says you helped her. That you're a good man. Damien glanced at Emma, something vulnerable in his expression. I'm trying to be. That's what Mama says too. She says trying is the bravest part. After Sophie returned to her coloring, Emma and Damien stood on the fire escape, the city humming below them. I meant what I said, Damien started. About dinner. When you're ready. Emma looked at him, this complicated man who'd dismantled her, the oppressor, and fought off his own enemies to protect her. Who'd admitted he wasn't good but was trying to be better. Who'd crouched down to talk to her daughter like she mattered. I'm ready, she said. His smile was genuine, unguarded. Saturday? Saturday. He reached for her hand, held it gently, like something precious. Thank you, Emma, for reminding me why any of this matters. Thank you for proving that fighting back isn't always futile. They stood there as the sun set over Chicago. Two people from different worlds who'd found each other in a parking lot over a stolen paycheck and decided that maybe, just maybe, trying to be better was enough. Inside, Sophie hummed while she colored, her breathing easy, her mother smiling, her world safe because sometimes when you fight back, you win. And sometimes when you win, you get more than money back. You get your dignity, your hope, your belief that the world can be different if enough people decide to make it so. Emma Chen had decided. Damien Corso had helped. And together, they'd proven that power doesn't always crush you. Sometimes, if you're brave enough and angry enough and tired enough of being small, power looks you in the eye and blinks first. 6 months later, Emma managed 3 sterling distribution warehouses with Patricia Reeves, implementing worker protections across the company. Sophie's asthma was controlled with medication they could afford, and Emma had dinner with Damien every Saturday, building something neither of them had words for yet, but both of them wanted. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple, but it was real, and it was theirs. And it had started with 4 words Emma had whispered to herself in a parking lot when everything felt impossible. I deserve better. She'd been right. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.